there was a preacher on, who's on at 4 in the morning, right? Whatever they were selling. And I was going to shut it off, but you know, sometimes they're inspiring and they give me insight, and I'm going to share it with you now in terms of answering your question. And the bottom line was he was saying about how to face life. And he came up with 3 ways. And I think this, for me, is a simple answer to your question. He said, start where you are, use what you got, and do what you can. And so to me, a mature person is somebody who is living out the serenity prayer. You know, the prayer, God, grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And a mature person lives their life recognizing that, facing difficulty, facing something. Tomorrow, who knows what can happen tomorrow? And our lives change in an instant. And one thing we know is change is there. And we're going through it all, not to get politics again, but you know, when that famous line from Roosevelt, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. The change in consciousness, the ability to, that it's not what's happening, it's how we deal with it. We turn that off, but the end slide was a question, a comment that said, when you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes, and when you change the way you be with things, how you be, what you be with changes. A mature person is exploring to find the wisest and the best way to be with and to look at life that makes the most sense. And sometimes it's facing the truth with support and healing. So I hope that responds. But I am doing that all the time as I watch my retirement money get cut in half by a guy who's advising me, telling me he's giving me good advice. As the ship is sinking, I'm going, start where you are, do what you can, use what you got. There's nothing there. I don't have anything. Anyway. So, but that's maturity, learning from what is. Other questions? Yeah.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Okay, I have a question. There have been hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people since 1940 who've gone through psychotherapy, related psychological helps.
Sure.
Then you get to the point where, do these people live longer than the population that never indulged in any help in dealing with their problems? Now, I just want to put one little fact on top of that. In the life insurance business, if you've been for many years, if you had visited a psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, you quite often didn't get the very best policy. Would you comment on longevity and psychotherapy?
So we add years to your life, add life to your years. If seeing a therapist helps you add life to years, go for it. But now, I'll be serious. I don't know any studies on that level. What I will say is, if the therapist, and I'm not necessarily a fan of any, you know, there's just seeing a psychotherapist by yourself doesn't mean anything. Who did you see? How did they help you? What's their background? How did you deal with it in that regard? But I would say the following. In general, one of the provisions of a physician when they take an oath is to do no harm. So I don't know whether, in a group as a whole, whether people who have psychotherapy end up living longer. But I would hope that people who had psychotherapy help them individually live longer than they might. So I'll be self-deprecating in a way that helps you understand that. I teach meditation, okay? And a person might say, well, why do I teach meditation? Well, because I got my own crazy mind that I'm trying to calm down and relax, and my own pains that I'm trying to face and deal with. And one of my patients came to one of my lectures and talks on meditation, and they jokingly said, because somebody was asking, it's not the same kind of question, but like, what is the results of this? What do the studies show about that? And, you know, if I meditate, am I going to be relaxed? And, you know, what's the guarantees? And my patient jokingly said, well, look at you, Dr. Epstein. You've been meditating and you're still, you know, whatever. It was kind of joking. And I said, yeah, but you don't know what I'd be like if I didn't meditate at all. So I don't know the answer to your question. I know people have issues and difficulties. If the psychotherapy supported them to lead a happier, healthier life and help them face their problems in a mature way, I think it will help them live longer. If it helps them stop their pains and their addictions and their drugs and their this and their that. Whether Bill Clinton needed psychotherapy or not, I'm using that as an example to face his guilt and his shame and his sex addiction or whatever. However he faced it, he was going to live longer after his bypass if he faced that. Whether a therapist helped him face it better than himself or his wife or a friend, that's up to each of us to find the resources we have and to try to find the best. But I don't think therapy by itself is a magic pill. I think my experience is let people choose what they want and then they'll find what they need. Rather than me thinking you need to see therapy, let them listen inside. What is it that they need? Some people, like I've shared with you, need therapy. Some people need to talk to their priest. Some people need to go to the opera. Some people need to come to the Wise Men and go bowling every week. We each have to find what it is that's going to support us in that regard. So, as a whole, I'm not necessarily a fan of anything if it's not based on what does this individual person need and what's going to be best for them. So I hope that answers your question.
Can
No,
I make one comment?
no, you cannot.
Thank you, guys.
This question is somewhat related to the previous one. A couple of years ago, we had a psychiatrist speak to us, and he was telling us how much psychiatry has changed over the past, let's say, 10 years. Whereas it used to be that if you went to see a psychiatrist, he told you to lie down on the couch, and he tried to interview you and draw out all your demons and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas recently, psychiatry has consisted of, you went to see a psychiatrist and he prescribed a medication for you, a tranquilizer. I wondered if your practice has changed the same way. In other words, somebody comes to see you, instead of talking to them about their issues, you prescribe a tranquilizer or some kind of medication.
Okay. Well, in terms of my practice, the answer is no, and I want to come back to a context that I gave for the talk here. What I'm saying from a mind-body standpoint and from a health and longevity standpoint, if your physical illness is connected to some stress or emotion or wound or burden that you're carrying, then unburdening yourself and freeing yourself from it, whether it's with a psychotherapist or psychiatrist, is going to help you live longer because you're going to live better and longer and healthier. In terms of psychiatry, I'm not here to talk about psychiatry, and that goes back to your question of letting go of the boundaries that the mind and the body are not separate, and we need to kind of treat both. But I'm for what's skillful and useful. So, again, to use the analogy, Roger is healing now. He had his wrist, and he needed a brace while it was healing. Okay? I may have surgery on my knee. I may need crutches. People may have difficulty functioning and see a psychiatrist because they're anxious and they're stressed and they want to take a medication to help them sleep or to help them deal with their anxiety. I might prescribe, as a naturopathic doctor, an herb that's gentler than that, that calms their nerves and helps them relax their nervous system. But to me, that's one part of a bigger picture in their soup. The other part is, how do we engage them to face whatever issues underneath may be there at the same time. So I'm for whatever works. If it's, and how and why do you use it? And is it skillful? And so sometimes we need crutches. We need a drug. I'm not for taking a drug and then, people can choose to do that and not addressing the underlying thing because it still festers. It's not healing. We want to do curing and healing. I hope that helps. And in general, I don't like to say positive things. There are some great psychiatrists and there are some great naturopaths and there are some terrible psychiatrists and terrible naturopaths. It's not, it depends on what their perspective is. I was sharing my perspective on things. But I haven't changed. Actually, I'm even more helping people look inside and be with it. Yeah.
Doctor, you mentioned many connections between stress and heart disease and physical problems and so forth. I have heard that stress very often can be the cause of cancer. Do you agree with that?
Again, there's no absolute statements. You have to look at each person And again, I'll tell you a story.